and what their survival strategies were. Well, the earliest points we have, and these are North America, all over Mexico, these point types, which are the Paleo-Indian points with Clovis, Folsom, Scottsbluff, Angostura. These are wide-ranging. Now, the Paleo Indians are characterized by the big game hunters, hunting the extinct Pleistocene mastodon, bison antiguus, and sloths, and that, and their lifestyle. Even though we don't have, especially down here in South Texas, we don't have a lot of great evidence down here, but we know there were probably small bands, hunter and gatherers, mainly hunters, not mainly, the hunting was their main staple, main subsistence, hunting late Pleistocene megafauna. But for this area, probably by that time, a lot of since it's already turned into a hotter and drier environment here, more so than other parts of North America and into Central America, Mexico, the megafauna, the Pleistocene megafauna were probably extinct, so they're probably hunting and following large modern game herds at the time. But it can be characterized, their lifeways can be characterized as small groups of hunter-gatherers following, going in big territorial ranges, a lot of contact, not very small population density, is what I'm trying to say. And then somewhere about 8,000, we have a technological shift, and we've got a new culture coming on, which is what we call archaeologists call the early archaic. And we have a different point, and the main technological shift was the utilization of the atlatl. I'll get back to this picture in a second. But the atlatl was served as an extension of the arm, kind of to increase the velocity and distance of the spear that was shown. And these guys were also hunter and gatherers. Populations are growing a little bit, and that they're still kind of falling about. They're still using plant subsistence, but it appears that their main staple was hunting. Their main food source, subsistence source, was hunting. And here's a picture of some guys trying to get some food for the community. And about 4,500 years ago, we have another shift coming, and we notice that in the change of points that we find. There's still dark points using the atlatl and that, but there's a bigger shift in there. This is just one representation of the material culture that has changed, but we noticed a big shift towards more plant subsistence, a wider variety of plants, and also stone pipes are starting to come. We didn't really find any stone pipes in the early archaic. Now we're getting that. And a variety of ground stone tools like this mano matata. This wasn't found here, but locally, just up the river in Hidalgo, Starr County, you do have ground mortars with pestles and all that found. Down here, there's really no bedrock on surface to have that, and lithics like that are rare. But I did want to show this example of a prehistoric mano matate. The major important thing that happened during this period was the sea level stabilized, and you get which is important to the delta area, to the Laguna Madre. You get these really productive estuaries, and really at this point, population they're growing. They aren't going as far, and it's smaller bands, and we really don't know exactly what the social, but we know they had small bands going out throughout the different seasons and at particular times coming together and growing. This was starting to take shape, and in the Middle Archaic, we're really seeing more of more cultures, especially down here, utilizing the marine environment, the estuary, and being almost strictly literal adaptation. And then about 2,000 years ago, we get the late archaic. And you see it in the change of dark points. This is the great for Texas. The change in the arrowheads or the projectile points is really the key indicator of cultural transition here. But these are some local points down here. And if you think there's an application of population densities in the middle archaic, right now the population and late archaic are booming, and you definitely have a wide variety of resource taking and all that. This is one thing that they did have find in archaeological context. Of course, this guy's not from the late archaic, but they did use the rabbit sticks or other forms like that, which is kind of like a boomerang, except it didn't come back. But they'd use it to kill small animals, small rodents like that. And it was a very effective tool.
They threw it?
Excuse me? Yeah, they threw it. And, okay, but like I said, during the late archaic, it was really, populations were booming, and that it really had intense literal adaptations down here. Then we get to the late prehistoric, which is really what we know the most about here in Cameron County or the Delta area. And this, the late prehistoric is also identified with the introduction of the bow and arrow. Here. These are all small arrow points. I think these are Cameron and maybe Matamoros late archaic. But yeah, these are Cameron points. And then we also have star points, which look like that. But the late prehistoric is really what we know the most about. And in the Rio Grande Delta, and which includes both sides of the Rio Grande River, we have three main characteristics which sets apart the late prehistoric cultures down here, and what the archaeologists know as the Brownsville complex. The first is really sophisticated marine shell technology, manufacturing for both ornaments and tools. And this, the conch was their main, one of the main resources that they used and manipulated. This is the raw material. And you can see on the sides there, they would use an abrader, either some type of lithic, and they'd cut a groove, they'd wear a groove in the shell, and then they'd snap it. And you can see these still today on a lot of the sites and all. That's how you know you have a cultural piece of shell. They're a really cool indicator. And you have the columella and just the body of the conch or the whorl. Now these are some points. Really, we get there. It has been stipulated they have been on shafts and used for sparing marine resources and that. But these are part of the columella, just sharpened and are ground to a point, utilized and hafted. But aside from tools, they also use them as ornaments, and these which were pierced up on top, and some were just left raw like that, dangling. But then you also have some that were incised and carved, and a variety of decorations on them for the ornaments. There's another shot of the blank. And out of that blank they produced shelled discs and beads like that. I'm sorry. A variety of shapes found. And also out of the body of the whorl, they'd make these long things where they hook up, strap in that, and then you can't see some on this, but they're incised on top, but then also you have decoration incised to the edge that would be shown. And really, since we relaxed lithics on the Rio Grande Delta, this is the most. When you go to a late prehistoric site here, the shell artifacts are going to be the dominant artifact material found out there. And these are hooks or awls, shell awls here. And here's another ornament that was worn. You actually see it was probably worn for a long time, as they wore out the first groove, and then they had to come back and re-drill another hole. And this is pretty much a denso. And here's one that's a little more ornate. And then we have some more tools. They don't just, the conch wasn't the only one, but this you can see some scrape scars on the bottom edge of the Dulcina scraper, the sun scraper. They scrape it possibly for scaling fish or cleaning hides of the animals they got. But they really utilized everything they could get their hands on. You have a cockleshell, quahog, and then you also have this pumice, which still washes up on the beach now. It's a lightweight volcanic rock that they use for braiding and grinding various stuff. These are just some of the raw resources that you find and use. Another very distinctive artifact, although they did make these in other parts, are these oliva shell danglers. Now they cut that, they break in the bottom, and what they usually have is like a coyote tooth or something in there, and so they'll just serve as little ornaments that make a jingle and make noise down there. Now I'll go into a little bit more about that later, but here's some modern oliva shells here, and there's a old I'm sorry, I keep getting in y'all's way, and the old and the ones that have come from the sites. Now this is the second trait. This was coming off of a burial. The second trait that really sets apart the Brownsville complex from the neighboring hunter and gatherers. That's another important thing. Up until the time of contact, these people remained hunter and gatherer culture. They didn't go into agriculture at all. While a lot of their surroundings, they knew of it. As we proved, they did have contact with the Mesoamerican societies. But these are some of the grave goods that were found, which is a second trait that separates them. They use cemetery sites. We know they were nomadic and they were going, but they would come back and bury their people in same locations. And there are a lot of them along the Arroyo Colorado. That seemed to be a major of some type of major significance to them. And they have these cemeteries on them. And this is also from an early site dug. This is the remains of a barrel. They were usually flexed or dug. They were put down into a pit, and it wasn't an extended barrel, a supine barrel like we see them, like we would think of ourselves. But you see some of the artifacts coming out within the burial goods. And the third characteristic, which really separates the Brownsville complex from the other societies, is artifacts of Mesoamerican origin. One of them is jadeite, and this is a picture of the raw material. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of some of the artifacts found here, but I know Don has some, and at Taro up in Austin, they have some from the Anderson collection, which Anderson was another avocational archaeologist who was a Cameron County engineer from, I think, 1922 to about 1940, and he mapped in hundreds of sites on both sides of the river and made an extensive collection, which is now housed at Texas Archaeological Research Laboratory in Austin, which is part of the University of Texas system. But that's jadeite. Then we also have serpentine, which are raw materials which are found here. And a lot of these are also found in burial context, a lot of these sites. And the other thing, the late prehistoric sites here in the Delta, they're very shallow. They aren't characterized by big depositions like stratified sites. They're just kind of shallow blown away. Although we do have some big ones here. And then another artifact that we can definitely trace to Mesoamerica is obsidian. Obsidian is a stone. It's another volcanic stone, but it is cooled very quickly, and it almost a glass-like rock, and it's a very sharp edge once you break it and once you manufacture, once you chip it off. And supposedly surgeons in some parts of the world still prefer that to steel as far as a cutting tool.
Did they bring it up here? Did they trade?
Well, that's something I will address in just a little bit, because we aren't really sure of the context, but A couple of specimens found on different sites through various chemical analysis, we're able to trace to these sources down in Mesoamerica. And these are not, well, I'll go into this in just a second. And aside from the jadeite, serpentine, and obsidian, we also have ceramics that are definitely of Mesoamerican origin, particularly Huastecan origin, which is along the coast, down south, down south a bit. And I'll show a map up there again. But Ev Anderson vessels, and he found 5 large vessels that were mainly whole. Of course, they were broken, but they were able to be reconstructible and all that. And this is the one that made the literature starting very early, starting, God, in the 40s or 50s, and characterized. There's a question whether it was of local manufacturer just imitating the Huastecan ceramics, or whether it was Huastecan ceramics up here. But we have proved, and there's actually a graduate student right now who's been studying this collection, but before that, it is without a doubt that these vessels are actually of Huastecan manufacture. And along with, and here's a close-up of this. This is the main figure that has been published and all that. This little figurine in there. And these all range, from the late prehistoric, somewhere about 1100 AD to about 1500 AD. Now, these are Oyas, and they were associated with burials on both sides in Tamaulipas and in Mexico. And they're found by A.E. Anderson during the 20s, 30s, and possibly the 40s. Now, this is more of a bowl, black on white. Okay. Now then, here's what I was talking about. There's the Huasteca region right in there. Now, definitely the Huastecs were, they weren't necessarily conquered, as some of the outliers of the Huasteca were conquered by the Aztecs. And they were a tributary society to the Aztecs and the people along the coast. Now the Huastecans did manufacture shell ornaments down there along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, but there was a very high demand for marine ornaments, marine shells in the Aztec, in the central valley of Mexico, by the Aztec and all that. So we really don't have a great understanding of how it worked, how they traded, or how the Mesoamerican artifacts came to be in the Rio Grande Delta. But we know they're there. We know they were here, and we know they're of that origin. But probably the Huastecans served as a middleman, relaying goods from Mesoamerica up to the Rio Grande Delta in exchange for vast amounts of marine shell ornaments. And which I was mentioning earlier about the Oliva shell tinklers. There are some tinklers that are found down in the Huasteca region, which are definitely of the Delta manufacture. So by the stuff.
What modern day city is that?
What's that?
What modern day city are we into in the Huasteca region?
Below Tampico, and I'm
Around Tajín,
yeah.
around Tajín,
Yeah.
through there.
I'm sorry, but yeah, Tampico, I believe. I'll be wrong when I do this. Once I tell you that, I believe Tampico is in here and then down here. So it is the Central Valley of Mexico is in here, and the Toltecs were here. They had the Pachuca mine, which was obsidian, but by the time of the late prehistoric, by 1200 AD, 1300, the Huastecans had already taken over a lot of the Toltec territories in that mine. I'm not sure what's next. Let's see, not gonna leave it there. Okay. But yeah, so like I was saying, we really aren't sure how the trade got started, how the exchange, or even to call it trade, how the exchange of information and material culture took place, and in what form. but we do know it was there in some state. And, which also goes into, the next subject of, stewarding, because as we, talk, the Huasteca region and the Rio Grande Delta region, in archaeological terms, have been understudied, really professionally, and with the Mexican culture, all that. There's not a lot of money coming into these regions to do extensive scientific studies of the area. And as we go into the Texas Archaeological Month, it's really serve as to help everybody become aware of our archaeological resources and the significance of these. All these sites get lost mainly due to modern development is the main cause of site loss in both regions, and big populations. We know this area has been growing tremendously for the past 10, 20 years or so. So it's all that, but with the help of professionals and avocational archaeologists, we really are getting a lot of information. There's still a lot more to get, but the Texas Archaeological Month is really about becoming aware and maybe becoming steward to the resources, help protect and interpret, and really to learn about and preserve it for not just us, but our future generation, for our kids and their kids, so we can have a better understanding of what came before us and what was here and where's the land that we came from. And really, that's really what they're trying to do with Texas Archaeological Month. But you see, they have a lot of history, a lot of hands-on oriented to kids. So to start them at an early age to really to get in tune with resources, cultural resource preservation, and but at this point, I'll be glad to answer any questions or try and answer any questions.
Who were the dominant tribes in the Rio Grande Delta?
It ranged, linguistically they kind of linked, or in the past, this might be a little outdated, but with the Caltech language. But in that, within the Caltechans, they had several small bands with different names, like the Como Crudos, and they had Spanish. So Spanish gave them their own name. So we really don't know what they called themselves, but when the Spanish came, and this is historic, and there is an overlap from what I'm talking about, the late prehistoric into the historic period, but it wasn't long, especially in this area, mainly due to disease and just the pressures of the European contact, that the Native American cultures, the ones original to this place, didn't last long here, and then you got people moving up from the south and people moving in from the north from the pressures of the Plains Indians that were being driven down south. But it's mainly the linguistics, the Caltech linguistic was what was dominant down here, and they didn't connect that down into the Huasteca region or even between that in Tamaulipas. But like I said, they had many different. The Spanish gave them many different band names, and now I can only think of the Como Crudas, Yanomamas, something like that.
We have a list of
Yeah.
You'll come here tonight.
Yeah, when I leave here, when I drive it
But you
home.
know, like Rolando, they say about the Crocoa Indians. They were more
The coastal bend area, yeah.
and this here was Colatica.
Yeah, Gold Texas.
Also, back to that question
Yeah.
about the obsidian. We had, when I started here 7 years ago, when they were putting the museum together, Billy Alger, you know, he had donated a chunk of obsidian that he found on the bluffs near the Brownsville ship channel. And the company from Houston says, oh, that's not possible. There was no obsidian, there's no trade over here. That was false statement, wasn't it? Or what do you
There was no, SB Houston or,
I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry.
Obsidian.
No, yeah. But the company, which was the Archaeological Cultural Resource Company, said
No,
that,
there was a museum fabrication company, but they would hire different people, historians and archaeologists, and what they had told them is that it's impossible to find obsidian up here because it wasn't here, but...
he found it, it's been found and it's been traced, it's been on known documented archaeological sites. So there was some type of exchange of goods and ideas there. So it is a large raw
They
material
did
like
find-
that,
They found
yeah.
raw obsidian around this area before, right?
What happened to that piece?
We still have it, we have it, but it's, I
Now you
haven't found it.
know.
It's in that back room.
You did win it?
No, I think I know where it is. Yeah. But it was a big chunk like that, and then.
Which I've
Put it in an exhibit because they thought it was.
You can see where knives have been flaked off of it for years. I mean, it's awesome. Yeah.
that material really doesn't need much reworking once you get a thin blade on it. It's so sharp, just like glass.
Also, have they found little clay figures around here? Because that's another source that we have. We have one that was found in the area.
I am not too familiar with the little figurines that would be that in archaeological context in the Rio Grande Delta.
But they haven't really studied it, have they? There hasn't been major study.
That's the thing. There's not a lot of money coming in here. The majority of work has been done by avocational archaeologists, really. And then past that is using the collection from Anderson, which I've only seen a small fraction of that collection.
This is based in
in
maps that were found in 1920s.
In the 20s, 30s, and 40s, which is extensive, but I know there's some other collections here that will eventually, with all the documentation, eventually go into a public resource such as Tarl or something like that for people to study. But the one thing they do have here, another item that they do have of interest, are clay nodules, which have been burnt, and they use kind of possibly like heating stones. What they use up where there's a lot of more stone material, they heat these and put them in liquids for food preparation or so. So they have these burnt clay nodules. They're pretty prominent in the archaeological context in the late prehistoric.
Can you still find?
Yeah.
And they're just like pieces of clay?
They're just like lumps of clay that have been burned hard to like a ceramic.
Also, are you familiar with the
Don't ask all the
I
questions.
know, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm just curious because, it came out in the paper when they were doing Bahia Grande, that they found the fish camps.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be deep, and I believe it. From what I know, we probably have Middle Archaic deeply buried under modern Holocene deposits out there, under thick meters of Holocene deposits, and hopefully we'll have some stratified sites. I'm very interested in seeing what those investigations come out, and but yeah, I mean, really, like I said, during the Middle Archaic, the sea level stabilized, and you have all these marine or literal resources coming, and the indigenous people, really, this was quite a how do you say, quite a good way to make a living, to live on, to eat healthy, and there's a lot of good resources for them to harvest here.
Or HEB,
Yeah. It's involved a little bit of work. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's also pieces that were found in the flats along the bank.
Okay.
So they were at surface level. This lady showed it to me.
Yeah, a lot late prehistoric. It's all surface almost. Hardly any of it's buried. And the thing is, like I was saying, another problem what we have, not just the lack of money coming in here to do scientific excavation, is that the sites are very shallow. Aside from the cemetery sites, which of course you got some stratigraphy there, but mainly the camp, which are our camps. And I guess I didn't have this one photo, which I usually have, which kind of shows what the camp was. The structures were probably about this big, just mainly made of wood and all that piled up, just to give you shelter for the night. Highly mobile, and you just go around and you make another structure wherever you go next. So they didn't leave great impacts. They didn't have any big structures or anything like that. It was really structures that would disintegrate within a few years after the abandonment. But they also probably came back to the same spots throughout the season or throughout different years.
Is there any idea of who then, like, if you read the accounts of like the 1519 explorers when they came in, and some of the people that came in the 1740s, they're actually encountering villages. Is there any idea of who those villages are, or?
Well, down in the 1519, now I can't think of the Spanish guy's name, is
Garay's expedition?
Yeah, they would definitely be the Caltechans and all that, and the villages would still be nomadic camps.
Okay.
Just
They would
big
be
as hard,
seasonal,
yeah. And at some points during the season, they would gather like here in October and in the spring, they had the big drum runs and all that. So at those different periods like that, they'd come and come together and harvest and, you know, have feast. And they'd go back out in different times of the year, like in July and August, and go get other resources from around the area too.
You know, in Escondon's accounts, when they came in, they had cornfields, the people that were here in this area.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's like, have we had a cultural shift then by 1740, obviously?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was due to the pressures from both north and south of different tribes being forced out of their areas and coming to here to the last vestige of non-European land. You know what I mean?
This was the last